Welcome, welcome to Catching Up with Conception, where I, Audra Smith, fertility coach, host interviews about all things fertility. Nothing is off limits, and we are here for radical acceptance of the good, the bad, and everything in between in the world of fertility. Now, if you like what you hear today, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening. It may not seem like much, but engaging with the content helps so much. Also, if you connect with this content, please reach out so we can help you and meet you wherever you're at. Welcome, welcome. Today we have Carrie Hauskens, writer with Blooming with Care. Thank you for joining us today, Carrie.
Thank you for having me. I feel very honored to be here.
Oh, I feel honored that you're here. We'll be honored together. It'll be good. It'll be good. Well, can you just tell us about yourself? Like, if anyone is not following her on Instagram, again, it's at Blooming with Care. It's one of my favorite accounts.
Oh,
It's
thank
just
you.
very cool and it's got awesome stuff. But I'll let Carrie tell us about it because she made it.
So I started out as just like, not an Instagrammer for infertility because I didn't think I would deal with infertility. And then um in 2014, my husband and I got married and we started trying right away to have kids. And the first few months, I was like, everything's fine. And
Mm-hmm.
then I quickly saw most people around me, my age, my friends getting pregnant. And I refused to acknowledge that there was a problem. I lived in the cycle of loops of it's just going to
Yep.
happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. We'll just start over. The hope fatigue, as we started calling it, because every new month it was like, well, this is a new time to try. And we didn't see a fertility specialist until 5 years in of doing just that, and just like my mental health dwindling, my marriage was always really good, but I was a basket case. Thank you, Brad, for,
Yeah, it's
continuing
hard.
to show up for the basket case. I mean, he had his own struggles, but it's different. It's a different feeling for, I think, two different people experiencing the same thing.
Yeah.
And then in we started we became great candidates for IVF. I think my husband, it was like motility, sperm count. It was male factor. That was the first like testing thing that came up.
Yeah.
So we did IVF the first round. I got pregnant and then I had a miscarriage at 8 weeks, and then we jumped right back into it, not even stopping at all because time felt
Yeah.
like it was just eating away at everything.
I get that. Yeah.
And I got pregnant again on the next round, and I carried my daughter for 8 months. But then I developed a rare liver pregnancy disease called cholestasis of pregnancy. Basically, my liver wasn't performing the way that it should. I never knew this was going to happen. There's no way of like really knowing. And it ended up resulting in taking her life. And I delivered my daughter stillborn. We named her Clementine.
Yeah, I was gonna say I remember your story, and anytime I'm at the store now and I see those little oranges, I
Yes.
think of you.
Yes. Oh, that makes me so happy. And obviously, like, this drastically changed my life. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
what am I going to do with my life? And I was told right away that I probably should not get pregnant because this pregnancy disease almost always comes back. And I had a very severe case. Like, I was on medication for it, and many people can have this and still have perfectly healthy babies. That was just not our case.
And is
So
that
this
something they test for?
it can be like one of the main signs is crazy itching. That's what they were like, "Oh, like I could not stop
Oh.
itching." And I was like, I have like scars. And my doctor was like, "Oh, there's this rare thing, maybe we'll check it." And then they were like, "Oh, you absolutely have cholestasis of pregnancy." And I was like, "I've never heard of that." And I remember the doctor saying, "Don't worry, it's fine. We're getting you on medication right away. Don't be stressed." So I wasn't. I tried my hardest to be like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I'm not stressed." And then within like I think about 48 hours, I felt my last kick and was like, "Ooh, I don't feel kicks anymore." And we went in and um but I remember also like cuz I was told not to get pregnant again. And I remember that being such a relief. So I was like, "Okay, well that takes me off the table." Like we
Yeah.
still had two embryos left. And so we moved pretty quickly into looking for a surrogate, and we had multiple people step up, which I still can't believe we had like options in that area.
Yeah. Like
And
people you knew?
People I knew, all people I knew, like,
Oh.
and the one that we, worked with was, one of my best friends from kindergarten who had connected
Oh.
with me through social media, like, she'd been following my story, and she was like sent me a DM and was like, "Hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but, like, I'd be open to trying," and I was like, "Oh, what a gift this would be," and so that
Yes.
honestly rekindled our friendship in so many ways,
That's
and she came
beautiful.
up she lives far away, but she would come up and come to the clinic, and, we did 2 more rounds of IVF with her. Unfortunately, both resulted in miscarriages. And we had started the adoption process like years before just to like test it out. We
Yeah.
knew somebody who worked in adoption agency. My therapist at the time was also a placement person. I feel like there's a better name for that, but
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
like she would place people, and so she was like, "Oh, I can, we had a few
Help
sessions with
facilitate.
her." Yes. And it quickly became apparent that adoption was not going to be for us. Where we live, parents have like a year to take their child back. And I was like, I don't know if I can lose another child. And I knew 2 people that this happened to, and I watched them, like, go through it and, like, bond with a baby, and then the baby was, like, taken away because the parents, like, got their life back together, which is also, like, such a weird
Is
thing
this
to be, like, rooting for. Like, parents
really?
not to get their life together or to get their life together, it was too honestly, it was too complex for me.
Yeah, I knew that that was the case, like, in foster to adoption,
Yeah,
like,
that's what
or
I'm talking about, yes.
okay, the reason why I asked, so I was adopted,
Mm,
um,
mhm.
so and I was just, like, thinking back through all of the things, and I was like, "I don't remember my parents
Yes, this
ever
was foster
mentioning
to
that."
adopt. We couldn't afford, like, private adoption,
Yeah,
and the adoption woman said that, like, private adoption isn't really, like, done the same way that it used to be, like, most of the things aren't private anymore, it's just considered open because they wanna, like, keep it open for the child,
yeah.
which again, I was like, "Oh, I have a lot of feelings about that, and I don't know if I'm up for
Yeah,
that."
it's a lot.
It's a
And
lot.
I do so like so mine started closed, but
Mhm.
I mean, it kind of quickly opened and then got
Right.
more open. But my original birth certificate is sealed, even for me.
Oh, wow.
Like there's a process that you can go through, but like you
Uh-huh.
have to like file stuff and pay to get it
Yeah,
unsealed.
yeah,
I'm like, guys,
yeah.
it's mine. I should be able to get it. I'm
Exactly.
35 years old. Like
Absolutely.
we're not worried about it, but
Right.
yeah, I know
And so
everyone on that list, but cool.
but it's a lot, like, there's a lot of
It's a
pieces
lot.
to it, like, I never even knew that part of it, like, there's so many pieces to adoption that
Mhm.
I feel like it's not a simple process by
It
any
is
means.
not, and I love that you brought that up because people who are not in the know, right?
Mhm,
That are like,
mhm,
"Well, just do IVF or just adopt." Like,
mhm.
why is it so hard? Well, because it's hard, Margaret. Sorry, any Margarets. I'm sure you're all lovely. It's just the first name that popped in my head.
But it isn't like a straightforward, simple thing, and adoption isn't like a cure for all the feelings of
It's
infertility that you would have, like, there's still so
yeah.
many layers to it, and I was in such a state to where I was like, I know this I wasn't comfortable doing that, and I didn't wanna try to bring a child into that feeling.
Yes.
So we decided 5 years ago to stop trying completely and start embracing the child free after infertility life. And it was a pretty like I felt very strong in the decision when it happened, and I haven't like gone back and forth, but I still have like sad days where I'm like, oh
Yeah.
God,
Little
like
pangs.
yeah, 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 but it's not like I mean, I can love my life and still grieve what happened at the same time, like, that both of those
Yes.
things happen all the time. I mean, that's what I'm learning, that's what it is to be a human, is to, like,
I was gonna
hold 2
say
emotions at once, if not more than 2.
often more than
Yes.
two. Yeah.
Often more than 2, yes.
Often more than two.
And then at that time I was a teacher and I quit like in the middle of the school year because I was like overwhelmed, and this was after I delivered Clementine, but I was like I just knew this wasn't for me. I didn't want to spend my life in the classroom anymore.
What year
And
was this?
2019. October of 2019. It was right before the
Oh,
pandemic.
wow.
Yes, like within a few months they were doing
Wow.
distant learning and I was not a part of it, and I felt very much like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I got out, like, right at that time." Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, I started working on my writing and I became a freelance writer. And now I'm currently in a master's of arts program for nonfiction writing to work on my memoir to share this story.
And I'm generally so excited to read it. I don't like
Yee.
read a lot of not fiction
Sure,
when
sure,
it's
sure, sure.
not like for work, which I love.
Hmm.
Like I give me an anatomy textbook, give
Oh
me
gosh.
an
Okay.
infertility, like let's talk about it, like all that stuff.
Uh huh.
But outside of that, right? Like right now I'm reading a book about dragons. Um, but I like every now and then there is a memoir, like there are stories, people's
Yes.
stories that I
Yes.
just fall in love with, and I sign me up, right? Make like a pre-sale list, so that I can pre-order it. I don't care how long out, right?
I'm obsessed with this energy. Thank you.
I'm obsessed with it. I really do. I love your energy. I love
Oh,
everything
thank
about how
you.
you embrace just your life, right? And how you talk about it.
Thank
Um,
you.
have you found writing like when you moved from like teaching to writing, do you always know you liked writing? Did it start as a
Yes.
way to like process everything that was happening? Like how did you find your way there?
So I've been writing pretty consistently since about the 6th grade. And
Oh,
like I've
that's cool.
journaled. I remember Mrs. Larson, my 6th grade teacher, I got to pick something out of her treasure box and I picked a journal. And it was my first
Oh.
like real journal.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and my mom always like, I kind of joke that I feel like, because I've always been a very emotional person. And I feel like my mom would be like, we've tried a lot of other tools. Please, why don't you try writing it down
Let's
kind
just
of
try
thing?
writing it down.
Yes.
Let's write
Which,
your feelings.
yes, bless my mother, because that became the way for me to process everything. And so I've been doing that for a very long time. And I always wanted to be a writer. Like that was like something I had like on the background of like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe someday. And I like wrote stories as a kid about mainly boys that were silly and I shouldn't have had crushes on, but also that's how I learned.
My very first crush, like, when you're little and they talk about, like, oh, my crush was Aladdin or my crush was like,
Uh-huh.
mine was Gaston.
Oh.
So, and that really says a lot about my dating history. And when I told my husband that, he was like, oh, yeah. Like, I always joke that I lucked into marrying the kindest man because my
Yes.
taste is Gaston.
Yeah.
And I own that. I own that.
We all
But
I feel like sometimes we have to, like, understand what doesn't work for us to find out what does work for us. At least that's what I'm telling
mhm.
myself, because I'm a
Yeah.
lot of trial and error and a lot more error.
I've gotta learn it my way. Like, I don't
Yes.
care if you tell me,
Oh, for
it's not
sure.
gonna
It's not
it's
gonna
not gonna work.
stick.
No.
So, and then I started, like, writing about infertility. I think right when we started our, IVF journey, and I started a blog, but I didn't, like, tell anybody about it because that sounded, like, way too scary, like, it was, like, a secret.
Yeah.
I just wrote a blog for, like, no one to read, which is kind of funny, but it was just how I
Yeah.
did it. I, like, picked out pictures and did all these things and then told no one about it.
I almost love that more, like, you made it for you.
Yes, and, like, nobody was reading it on the internet, but I loved it for me, exactly, and
Yeah.
then I remember having a brunch one day with girlfriends, and I was like, I've been doing something, you guys," and they were like, "What are you talking about?" And I remember, like, pulling up my laptop and, like, putting it on the table, and, like, my husband knew, but uh,
Yeah.
he's different again, and my girlfriends were, like, looking through it going, "Oh my gosh, you have a website? Oh my gosh, like, you have all these things?" And I was like, "I've been writing." And I remember one of my girlfriends being like, "We have to remember this brunch because this is the start of something." And I was like, "Oh, that sounds scary. That sounds really scary."
And it is.
And
It
it
is.
is. In fact, when I got accepted into this master's program, she texted me and was like, "Remember that brunch?" And I was like, I do, and I still have those uncomfortable feelings, but I'm still showing up."
Yes.
And then I feel like, especially when we decided not to have children, I only knew of a couple of people online actively and consistently sharing about it. And so I started to
Yeah.
really pick up on that and be like, well, this is my life. And I've always loved a little show and tell moment. So that's kind of what I use Instagram for.
Mhm. No, it's good. And if correct me if I'm wrong, but you have two beautiful little pitties.
Mm. So we only have one. We had to put 2
Oh,
down earlier this year. But that's
I'm so sorry.
it's okay, it's okay. It was recent. We adopted this one recently, so we just have a new one, Chance, and, but we had 2 that were my life for so
And
much
they're
of it,
the
and
ones that were in
actually
the Christmas pictures, right?
yes, yes,
Okay, so
yes,
that's
yes,
all right. So
yes.
at least I'm remembering it right.
Well, and I feel like when I put them down, it was like this extra grieving part because oh, I'm gonna cry. It was like such they were like such a part of my infertility
Yeah.
journey, and like they knew me when I was pregnant, and they like knew I was pregnant and had all these like really special moments together, and then like putting them down was like, wow, we are like really closing that chapter. Not that like we were trying to have kids, but just it just made it, I mean, they were our kids for so long
Yeah,
because
they're your babies.
but now we have a new one, and he is a lot, but he's also wonderful.
How old is he?
He's 4, and he was
Okay.
in the shelter for a year, so he
Oh,
was there for a long time.
yeah.
I mean, like, he's very good, like, right now he's, like, sleeping on the couch, but, I wish he was sleeping next to me, but we're not there
Wait.
yet.
You'll get there.
I
You'll
sure
get
hope
there.
so. I sure hope so. But having dogs has been such a way for me to, like, care for something, and, like, if you don't like dogs when you come over to my house, good
You're not
luck.
gonna have a good time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
Same at our house.
yeah. It's
We've
been
got we've got a so she was listed as a cattle dog
okay,
mix
okay.
at the shelter, and I got her when she was 3 months.
Oh,
Um,
baby.
oh yeah. Oh, she's not a baby now. She's 11, and she
Oh,
has old lady face.
yes.
Um, but she definitely has pit bull in her, right? And I
Uh-huh.
never had a dog like that, right? I
Oh.
never had like my parents had my dad liked to hunt, so we always had like Brittany's.
Yep, yep.
Um and so this was the first little shelter special I'd ever had. Um and she is the sweetest. Like she would like
What's her name?
snuggle. Lucy. Her name
Lucy.
is Lucy. She has to be tucked in next to me
Oh,
for
yes.
bedtime. And I asked people who had had pit bulls. I was like, is this pit bull? And they're like, yeah, they're just like the
Yes.
snuggliest, sweetest.
Yes.
But she also has major stranger danger. I
Oh.
say she's a good alert dog,
Uh-huh,
right?
uh-huh.
Because she will alert you if someone is there. And thankfully it sounds scary enough so
Yeah,
that if there was like an intruder that like
yes.
would do
They
it.
would probably second guess themselves.
Yeah, but really what she's barking is, "I'm afraid of you. Please go away." But what it sounds like is, "I'm gonna eat your face."
Which is very pit bull. I feel like pit bulls are so scared, and they're like, "I'm big and scary," but I guarantee if when someone crosses that door, my dog's like, "Oh, we're best friends now," or I have to run away from you.
Well, yeah,
Those are the
so
2
I have
options.
to let people know when they come in, I'm like, "Just come in and sit down."
Yes.
Like, because literally, like, I think part of it, like the height, it seems bigger, it seems like, I
Yes.
don't know. But once they come and sit, I was like, if you sit down, give her like 10 seconds, she's gonna sniff you and you'll be best friends. And then that's
Yes.
exactly what happens.
Yes. Oh, I love that. We raised cattle dogs growing up because we had cows and cattle. And I'd never had a pit bull until our last 2 pit bulls, and I had no idea of like how snuggly they are and
They're
how
so sweet and
they're
so
all
snuggly.
they they sleep in our arms. They want to be like cuddled up in your arms. Sometimes it's like it's a little much. Like I need you to
Yes, yes,
I'm sweating. But they're the best.
yes. A couple nights ago, so I hurt my hand, and right now it's out of its little brace. It's in its ice,
Oh.
but it's like this big, like chunky brace, and our whole house, literally the whole month of January, has just been not feeling great. And poor Lucy's been so worried about us. Like
Oh.
there's a picture my husband took from a few nights ago where my hand is on some ice. The cat is like across my chest. The dog is like laying on my side and my belly. She's like, they've got to make sure that
We
mommy's
have to make
okay.
sure you're okay. Oh, I love it. I
Yes,
love
very
it.
sweet. But it's hard when I'm trying to read. Like I said, so I just got this Fourth Wing book,
Okay, yes.
right? So I know the fourth one just came
Yep.
out,
Yes,
Black
it
Eye
did.
or so. So I'd
I have
never
not
really
read
heard of
them,
it.
but I know I'm very aware of them.
Yeah, I had never even really heard of it. But so after my fun little snowboarding accident, my friend was like, "Hey, can we stop in at Target? I ordered the fourth one. I like want to get it." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, tell me about it." Um, and I was like, "Oh, she was like, it's like Harry Potter, but a little older and with dragons." And I was like,
I don't
"That
hate
sounds
that.
cool."
Yeah.
So I got it, and I'm a fast reader when I like something.
Sure.
I got it a week ago, and I'm like 300 pages in.
Oh, wow. But your hand,
Yeah.
does
Oh,
it
I
hurt to
just
hold it?
Oh, no, I have to use I have to use
Oh, yeah.
my not my left hand, and it's, like, very awkward, or I, like, ignore my doctor's messages, and I, like, use my so you can kind of see, like, there's
Yeah,
my
I can
okay.
absolutely see a bruise there. That looks
Yeah,
like a big bruise, actually.
yeah. But I found, I was like, "We're just chatting, like, about wonderful things." I have found that since, like, going through infertility, and then, I had my daughter through IVF,
Mhm,
and, so I also I experienced, recurrent losses,
mhm.
before I finally, like, I was kind of like you, like, the doctors were like, what you're doing is, you can keep trying. Obviously, you can do what you want, right? But, like, this path is not likely to lead you to a healthy pregnancy.
Mhm.
And I think the furthest along we got was like 7 weeks, and I have to remind myself, like, that's still lot, like,
Absolutely.
we minimize our losses because we
We
think,
sure
well, it's
do.
other people.
Yes.
And I preach all the time, like, just because other people have other things that made them more sad or what feel bigger doesn't mean that your loss is any less.
Absolutely.
But, we're terrible at taking our own advice.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Yeah. Absolutely to that as well, yes.
yes, but I was kind of like, yeah, I was like in denial. I was like, no, I don't. I can do this myself.
Uh-huh.
But the final one was, I mean, just too physically painful, right? And you
Yeah.
talked about the what of hope, the not cycle of hope, but
Hope fatigue, is that what you're talking?
hope fatigue. There we
Yes.
go. Yeah, like,
My husband came up with that because that
it
cycle is
was
exhausting.
it's exhausting, and it's just all consuming, right? So
Yes.
for I have to do the timeline, right? I had my first loss fall 2017. We did IVF October of 2020. So that's what, 3 years? Yeah. Um, it took 2 years before I was like, okay, I'll do it. Right. And it's all consuming. And then you go through, especially after having a loss, like, you're still consumed with, well,
Yeah.
what if? And
Mhm.
then had my daughter had like really bad postpartum anxiety that hit like
Oh,
6 weeks in. And even without that, right, like, just motherhood, you're so tangled up in
yeah.
all of it. And about a year and a half ago, I started, like, coming out of a bit of a fog. Maybe 2 years, I don't know, time has no meaning. Today
Agreed.
should be Thursday. For anyone listening, it's a Tuesday while we're recording this. It should be Thursday. Um, but I, like, have started coming to, reading again, because I loved reading. I was a big reader when
Mm,
I was a kid.
mhm.
Like, in the seventh grade, I was trying to read Dante's Inferno,
Oh, wow. Okay.
which is a weird thing for a seventh grader to want to read. But
Absolutely, but
I,
I
like,
kinda love it.
avid reader. But you lose so much of yourself
Yeah.
in the, like, plight to have kids. The once you have, like, if you have them, like, I didn't feel like a person, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Well, and everything revolves around it, and, like, my schedule I couldn't even plan things, like, months in advance because, like, well, I'll be
no,
pregnant
because,
then, or
yeah,
I'll be doing IVF, and I won't be able like, it took so much away, and, like, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I tried
yeah,
until it became too much, but, like, I know that I at least tried, and I think there's a lot of people are like, "Well, I feel like, if they don't even wanna do IVF," and it's like, "Well, I feel like I'm not trying enough," but I also feel like, no, we all are different in how
yeah,
and what we wanna do and what we're willing and not willing to do, and every single decision along those ways are all valid because
yeah,
we can't like, yourself best, and if that's not gonna like, when I had learned about the adoption process, I was like, "I don't think this is for me," and I felt really bad about that. And I remember the therapist saying, like, no, you're allowed to feel that way. And it's actually good that you're acknowledging it and not just pretending that this is not happening and then
Yeah.
following through and then dealing with the repercussions of that, which I
Yeah.
think that is something I needed to hear because there's so many different avenues and ways to become a parent.
And I also think there's so many ways to be a person.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's okay if that journey is not what it ends up being, right?
Mhm.
It's okay if families look different than what we thought they would
That was
starting
a
out.
really hard one for me to wrap my head around, like, letting go of the life that I wanted because I refused to even consider not having children for so long that it was like and I'm a goal-oriented person that will work hard, and I
Oh,
did
yeah.
that and was like, "It's not coming into the way that I want it to be," and I was so upset about it. But every month, it's like, maybe a new time to try, so, like, I just kept falling into that cycle, and it was personally for me, it felt very unhealthy, but I didn't know what else to do. And I didn't
Yeah.
have a lot of people represented in my life that didn't have children that wanted them. I have a lot of people in my life that don't want children, but I only can think of like 3 older people that wanted children and didn't have them, which and that's just that I know of because I know a lot of
Yeah.
people weren't talk or still don't talk about it, but
Yeah.
it's kinda wild. It's like, oh, I don't know, there's just it's not I mean, I feel like the people are speaking up about it a lot more, but I that's because I'm actively looking for it and surrounding myself
Yeah.
with that, but it's not always discussed, which was really hard for me to be like, "What would life be like without children?"
Yeah. I have to say, so you have like a little rainbow glimmer that's like right here,
Oh, that's
and it's
fun.
making me smile. It feels like it's like a little high,
A little
rainbow.
twinkle in my outfit.
Yeah, no. And so my aunt who passed away a few years ago, she had wanted kids, right? Um, but so she was married 3 times. And I think it was her first or maybe it's twice. I'm getting it all like mushed
Sure.
up. But her earlier husbands were very unkind
Mm,
and said that no, that that's not happening. Right. And I didn't know any of this until, I was older and I was an adult,
right.
and my mom was telling me about it. But um, it made sense how, like, she was trying to like be active, like, especially when we got a little bit older. I think it was easier for her, or I think it was harder for her when we were younger to have that like close relationship because
Absolutely.
it was something she wanted. And as I'm talking about this now, like I'm having little, even like little brain bubbles, like thinking
Yeah.
about it. Like when we got older, yeah, I got to really build more of a relationship with her. And my uncle, who so my uncle married in, right? But after she passed, like he's still Uncle Guy. Like he's on our like group chat, and we still talk to him, and but yeah, it was thinking back on it now, like I didn't really have much of a relationship when we were younger until we got a little bit older, and
Yeah,
I'm
which
wondering if
makes so
that's
much sense.
why.
Like, I had a
Yeah.
really hard time with my nieces because they were born while we were trying, and it was really difficult to, like, show up as an aunt. They're much older now, and I love them dearly, and
Yeah. And I'm sure you
it's
loved them
just
dearly then, but it's hard.
absolutely, that's a great point. I did love them
Yeah.
dearly
Just
then.
for the little ones listening, your aunt has always loved you with very, very much.
Very true, they're very cool people.
How old are
Um,
they?
9 and 7, I believe. I think they're
Oh,
one's about to be 10. Oh gosh, no, that might be maybe she's 10. I don't know, around that age. But, like,
yeah.
very fun and, like, they like to like, we always get strawberry ice cream when we're together and just
Oh.
they love to read, so I give them all of my old books that I had when I was a teacher and that I've been, like,
Oh,
saving for I don't know what, but I love kids' books in
you
general.
save them. Well, yeah, kids' book are awesome,
Kids' books are awesome.
right?
And, but, like, that is a very real, I think, feeling of, like, "Ooh, I had such a hard time being around them as babies because it was like, oh, wow, like, I don't get that." And
Yeah.
it was hard for our family as well because My husband had a different feeling about it, and I'm sure my sister-in-law, who was the mother of these is the mother of these children, has a different feeling about it, and trying to mix all of that together was not easy. Honestly, sometimes it's
No.
still not easy, but it's a lot easier now that, like, I can have a conversation with these humans and be like, "You're kind of a cool kid. Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about black lipstick or something." Like
Amazing. I love that. Yeah. So, my very long story short, I have guardianship of my nieces and nephews,
Oh,
the older
wow.
ones.
Uh-huh.
And I also feel like I have to so for me, that means I have legal paperwork, which means I can do all of the things. They live with their dad, which is my brother-in-law.
Mhm.
When we lived in Texas, so I got guardianship of them. Math timelines. Spring 2017.
Okay.
And so the twins would have been 4, Isabel would have been 6. So they're young. Very long story short, a judge removed my sister from the picture,
Sure.
right?
Mhm.
Um, but I knew I was 20. I just turned 21 when Isabel was first born. And it's my younger sister. And I so I told my husband when so he met her when on her third birthday, right? And we'd been dating a few months, but I told him on the drive down, I was like, I knew from the moment that child was born that she would one day be mine, right? That
Oh
those
my
kids
goodness, wow. Sure. Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
writing was on the walls,
Yeah, 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 yeah. I have
And
similar family members, so I can
the writing was on the wall. And their dad is great, and I love that, I may not have that relationship with my sister anymore, but I
Sure.
have my brother-in-law, and um we all kind of work together, and especially during COVID, like the twins lived with us when COVID hit. Um
Wow.
and the house we live in now, when we moved up to Washington, like we're a 3-person family. It's me, my husband, and our daughter.
Mhm.
But we specifically got a house with 5 bedrooms so that the kids can
Oh.
come up and they spend the summers, and it's great.
Oh, that's
um
actually really sweet.
but um I had no idea. Like when I started to go through like trying to like grow my kids, like
Mhm.
not just like the ones that I had,
Mhm.
um I find and I still do. I get very defensive because people were trying to tell me how to mother or how to protect my
Mhm.
heart,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
like, well, they're going to grow up and they're not going to like need you as much, or maybe your brother-in-law will get married and they won't like, and oh well, now you're gonna have your own kid. And I'm like, we're gonna stop this right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those children have been mine from the day that they came onto this earth, like, and they know that, right? Like, not that they're gonna listen to this. They know Auntie has a podcast. Isabel might. Isabel likes to join in on my Monday meditations, but she's 14, so right,
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
um, but they our hearts are not a pie, right? There's not
Yeah.
an unlimited supply. And
Yeah.
so when people like ask me how many kids that I have, I say, well, I have 3 that I got from the farmers market and 1 that's homegrown. um
Oh, that's so cute.
right, because they all came to me in different
Absolutely.
ways.
Yes.
But it's
Yes.
funny because my husband and I, we both come from families of 3 kids, and we thought that we wanted
Oh.
to have 3.
Uh-huh.
um but after we went through everything we did
Mhm.
to get pregnant with my daughter, and to the point where like I'm like pregnant, um and with the kids, we were like, this feels full. This feels
Oh, that's
like
such a good
it's
feeling.
fulfilling. And so
Yes.
um and it's fun. It was very that leaving the state that we were in to move to Washington. That was the hardest part, right? But they are leaps and bounds from where they were when they like needed me
Yes.
there, and I like
Yes.
needed my like physicalness,
Yes.
right?
Well, and I love the,
um
like, reframing of what a family is. I think that that is, like,
yes.
such an idea that I mean, like, and I even grew up like my mom was a single mom when she first had me, and like actively chose not to keep my biological father in my life, which was the right choice. Thank you, mom. And then she married my stepdad when I was, I don't know, I was young. I don't remember a time without him, but like there's just such a, I didn't feel like I was lacking in any way,
Yeah.
like, and but I will say I thought that my life was gonna be lacking without children, and then when I started living it, I was like, "Oh, no, no, like, I can put intention into my life in a way that
Yeah.
I just didn't know how to do or didn't expect to do, but now that I'm doing it, and it's like, oh, no, there are so many ways for people to have a family, like, my family currently right now is my husband and our dog and I, and that is full and
That is a
enough.
family.
It's a family, and it was just like I felt less than for a long time thinking that that could be a family. And I had to do a lot of self work. Thank goodness for a good therapist of like,
Yes.
thank you for reminding me that like this is enough and it can be more than enough. And I don't even have to be done with just what's happening now. And that doesn't mean adding more children. It could mean a plethora of other things.
Yeah. And so you just started your master's program,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And how long is that?
It's gonna be for 2 years, and it's a low residency, which I didn't even know existed because 'cause I'm technically going to a college in Oregon, but I only go for 2 weeks a semester, and we have, like,
Oh.
condensed classes, and then the rest is built to mimic the life of an author. So, like, I just sent 2 chapters to my advisor, and we're chatting today about it, and I'll probably have to rewrite them, seems like according to his notes. But, like, it's supposed to be set up for you to have your job and then also be able to work on this. And, it's been really overwhelming. It's also been really great. It's pushed me
Yeah.
out of my comfort zone in a lot of really uncomfortable ways.
Yeah. Growth like that is hard.
Yes. Yes. Especially when it's like my personal story and happens to be the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to
Yeah.
me.
You're not just writing about dragons,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. But it's really like making me like just the questions people have been asking me and I'm like, "Oh, I've never really thought about it like that." Or, "Oh," like somebody said, "So you always had pregnancy tests in your house?" And
Oh,
I
I
was like,
saw your thing about this.
"Yes."
I didn't see the end of it, but I was like, yeah, I mean, I still have pregnancy tests in my
Yeah,
house.
I always like, ever since I started having sex, I always had pregnancy tests just to know, and, that doesn't mean I would necessarily, like, have a baby, but I wanted to know if I was pregnant, and I was on birth control and, like, taking the precautions, which is kind of a silly joke now, but that's another story, and, most people, even the poll I took on my Instagram, like, I'd say, like, 80% of people, like, "No, I would never keep him around if I wasn't trying to get pregnant," and I was like,
What?
"What?" But, like, I never even thought of thinking about that. Like, I just kind of assumed we all did this thing, and
I
it's
would think,
very interesting.
yeah, I'm like actively trying to not like we are happily like I love my daughter and I have friends that have like younger kids and I one of my very good friends has a 1-year old and she is the sweetest, just
Mhm.
oh, cutest little smushy baby face. And like my husband will get down and like does like the baby play and I look at him, I don't get any ideas. And then I look at little baby and I'm like, it's not gonna work, ma'am. It's not gonna work. Your cuteness is not gonna work. I will come over and we will sing and we will play and I will hang out with you when your mommy's gotta take your big sister places. But no, ma'am, you're not gonna convince me. But
Mhm.
yes, I always have tests.
Yeah, I just kind of assumed everybody did, I'll be honest, but they
Well, I
don't.
say that. I think if I ran out of the ones I have now, I probably wouldn't buy
Mhm.
more.
Yeah, I that's a good point because I do feel like I've gone like before we were trying to have kids, like I would go for a while without them. But also like I don't know, I lived in college, like I lived with a bunch of females and we just always had them on hand. We also always had like plan B on hand because
Yeah.
who knows? And so like it was just like an essential. I was talking to a girlfriend about this recently and she said I always had tampons and pregnancy tests because I thought it would be one or the other. And I was like, that's kind of what I was thinking. And this was again before infertility, but this is like the essentials I kept in my
It's
house.
clever. And
Exactly.
speaking of college, have you seen the HBO Max or whatever the Sex Lives of College Girls?
Yes. Yes.
I
I think
just
I've
like
only seen the first season, but I loved it.
I didn't watch Sex in the City, like,
Uh-huh.
even in, like, my reading I'm fine, you want sex in a show, cool, whatever, but that's, like I like action movies, I like,
Mhm.
dragons, keep talking about dragons, right? Like, I like horror
Uh-huh.
or, like, fantasy, sci-fi, all that stuff, um, like, loved Game of Thrones. I would've
Mhm.
been fine if everyone was completely clothed, like, you know? I but so I was hesitant. I was like, I don't want to watch a show that's just like all about sex, and it's
Sure.
not. It's
Right.
written so what it gives me like warm fuzzy feelings because it feels like it's a show about girl friendship.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I love that. It and which is something that I didn't really come to really appreciate until I was older. And then
Yeah.
even more so now. I was a tomboy. I had mostly male friends. To be fair, I was bullied by the like
Mhm.
cool girls when I was a
Mhm.
kid, so I'm sure that had a lot to do with it.
Mhm.
But now without like if I go more than like a week or so with like out a mom's night where I actually get to just see and be with my girlfriends, I'm crabby.
Well, and like I think the older we get, the less time we have and are available for that.
Yeah.
And it's harder to like come together. And I know for me personally, I don't have a lot of energy to give to people that I don't like being around. So
Yes.
it's
I
like
just am not gonna talk to you. I like
exactly. I'd rather be by myself, which I feel is
mhm.
healthier for me, but also we still need community. We still have to have community, especially I feel like as older women like coming into the world. Can you hear that horn
Yes.
honking?
I can't.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. I live next to a car lot and it's happening.
That's okay. Even if you could, this is the lowest fi or whatever. Like,
Okay.
I listen to make sure that the volume levels are the
Perfect.
same,
Okay, okay, okay.
and I slap a sticker on it and I go, "Cool. We're a
Awesome. I just
one-woman
wanted to
show."
acknowledge if it was happening. But I do feel like the women like I over this past year, I was actually just thinking about this yesterday of like where I was last year at this time
Mhm.
and I was really searching for community and I felt like I didn't really like I have really good friends that don't live near me and that's very common for adults.
Yeah.
Like we have our own lives going on and I was trying to actively find new friends and I wasn't finding them. And I was like going on weekend trips and going out with new people and it just wasn't clicking. And I do have this community of like creatives, writers, artists, all women that I adore. And it took me about a year to create this, but I
Yeah.
had to like actively put in the work, especially since I started working from home because when I was a teacher, my friends were my
You just
coworkers.
yeah.
And I loved that, but and I'm still friends with them, but we don't see each other the same way. I'm also not a
Mm-mm.
teacher anymore, so I'm not, like, in the trenches like they are, and I'm kind of like an outsider, and I needed somebody who was, like or people that were, like, in similar spaces
Your
as me.
phase, yeah.
Yes, and I also wanna acknowledge all of these women are mothers, and I was for a long time, I was like, "I need friends without children," and I still have them, but I think that it does that's not an end all be all. Like, we can
Yeah.
still have friends that have children. I think a big part of these women is that we don't only talk about their children. I didn't meet them through their children. I met them
Yeah.
through, like, local community art events, and that's usually how like, that's our foundation. And so, I think that we have to find our people, and it takes a bit. It's like you're dating all
It
over
no,
again.
I was gonna say, so as an adult, like I'm not great at small talk. I don't know how to do
Yeah.
it. And so we moved to the Seattle area about a year and a half ago, didn't know anyone,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And so you have to like force
Mhm.
yourself to build a community or you're not gonna be, able to stand. But one of my good friends up here is the first lady I ever met. I was like, how do I like try to hang out with her? How do I try to be friends?
Yeah.
She owns this little local bookstore. It's Salmonberry Books. It's super cool.
Cute.
Hi, Liz. And so I was in there one day and I was like, do you just like want to be friends? Do you like want to go like hang out sometime? And she was like, yeah. And
I
so
mean,
that's just how I do it now. I just
was
like,
that sounds like a very big girl question, like adult I mean, that makes me nervous even thinking about asking, like, "Do you wanna be my friend?" Because like, that leaves the room open for rejection.
Yeah, because maybe they could say no, and I don't just ask I don't just
Right, right,
ask
right, right.
men, right? Um, but I have found, like, I don't know how to do the, like, back and forth and maybe, whatever, and so I just ask, and thankfully it has not come back to bite me in the butt,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, but
Because
it is weird.
I did find some friends that I did start hanging out with, and I was like, "Oh, I don't think we're."
We're it's not a
Yeah,
good match.
and that was really uncomfortable for me to, like, pull back from without being like, because I don't wanna never talk to them again. It's just like, I don't feel like our core values are really lining up, and I don't really wanna spend time with someone that it's
That's
not
hard.
flowing. Like, it felt very forced, and
Yeah.
but again, I feel like I had to go through some things of learning what I don't want to find out what I do want.
Yes, and I will say as I've gotten older, I'm much more comfortable in who I am and what
Yes.
I want.
Yes.
And like you said, like I don't have time or energy to spend on stuff that does not align with that. And
No.
so
I could be at
like
home reading, and I would often choose that instead of, like, being around people that I don't enjoy. Like, that's
yeah, I don't. And so because I have so very carefully curated the people
Mhm.
around me to, people that are kind or people that challenge me in a good way,
Yes.
or again, like share the same values, when I come across something that is very counter to that, or like I am very lucky. I do not have to deal with people being mean to me very regularly, or
Right.
people being like, I'm not in the presence of a lot of jerky people.
Yes.
And so when I am, I like, not that my like skin isn't as tough as it used to be, right? I'm just not as prepared for it. My guard is like
Mm,
lower,
mhm, mhm.
right? And so when it enters, I'm just not as like it takes me, it upsets me more than I like to think that it would, but it's just because it's not something that I deal with
Absolutely,
much.
yeah. Well, and, like, I'm sure that's intentional of, like, well, I'm not surrounding myself with people that are mean
Yes.
to me, and so when someone is mean to you, it's like, "What? What are I thought we were friends," or, "Jesus, like, what's happening here?" And I think that that's an important thing to acknowledge that, like, we're not always flexing that muscle of, like, having to be like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?"
Or
Because
the
I don't.
ability to control my face.
Yes.
I've lost it. And so I have to be really careful because I like work remotely.
Mhm.
And it's like thankfully, like when I'm working with fertility clients, that's not a problem. But like there are times when I have to like deal with stuff outside of fertility stuff that I'm like, oh wait, I should not make that face. This is this is not professional.
But also, they're probably also not being professional, I feel like,
Well, yes.
if you're having to respond with your face of like, "Oh gosh, what does my face look like now? What are they saying?" It's like it's wild the things that people say to you, and especially, like, as somebody I'm chronically online, I don't hate it, I like having an online presence. In fact, this morning, I was telling my husband, I was like, "I feel like I wanna collect all of the mean things people say to me just to, like, put it somewhere and
Yeah,
maybe burn it or,
I
like,
love
laugh
that.
about it," and actually, I shared this
Both.
online, and one of my followers was like, "You should also write down good things people are saying to you," and I was like, "That is a very good point because I can get lost in that loop." But
Yes.
just especially as, like, a woman without children, like, one that I got this morning was I'm assuming it was a man, I will be honest, when they said, "Hopefully your husband doesn't leave you because you can't have children." And I was like my first response was, "What makes you think it's me?"
Yeah,
Like
what makes you think and, we wanna hope that it was a man, but it's sad seeing that there are so many women that
Yes.
are internalizing kind of such hateful
Yes.
rhetoric against themselves.
Yes, I was actually talking about this yesterday about, like, growing up in the '90s, I was very much of the mindset of, like, women are my competition, not my community, and I had, like, a
Mhm.
good few friends, but everybody else was competition also for, like, subpar men. I wanna be very clear of, like
Yeah.
like, we were
Yeah.
competing for boys who, like, didn't pass biology or something, and
Yeah.
not no shade in that because I failed classes, but, like, it's just I've had to, like, work through the feelings of, like, "No, that doesn't there's room for everybody. We don't
Yes.
have to be, like" scratching and fighting each other for this one path. Like, that's not how
Yeah.
literally the world works.
Unlearning so much of that, like, patriarchal,
Yes.
misogynist, like, I mean, I'll still find myself and where I catch it really is, certain actresses that I grew up just like, "Oh, I
Mm,
don't like her. I don't
uh-huh.
she's like," and then as I grow older, I go, Why
Why?
didn't I like her? Why don't
Yeah,
I like her?" And I reflect on that, and I'm like, "That's ridiculous. She's awesome. Like, why did I internalize this so
right.
much?" And so now when there's news and it's like talking trash about like a female actress or whatever, and I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah.
why are we
Let
doing
me
this?"
question
Like,
this. And I think this still comes up in my life, like, a few years ago when I was dealing with infertility, and I lost a best friend through this because she could get pregnant and I couldn't, and that, like, it was the hardest breakup I've ever been through.
friend breakups are the worst.
The worst, and people were, like, actively being like, "You have to show up for her. You We don't wanna hear about what you're going through." And
No.
I
Was she
clearly,
doing that?
not her specifically, but her group of friends
Oh,
was that I was entering
no.
into, and I was like, "Oh, you're right, I should be." And then it was like, "No,
Mm,
I have these really big feelings." I just experienced my first miscarriage. I have these really big feelings that, like, I don't know how to deal with, and I'm supposed to just show up at my friend's baby shower and be chill? No, that is a big ask. But I wanted to, like, fit into their box of what they thought I was, and I worked really hard to do that, and shocker, it didn't work out. Like, I wasn't
mm,
comfortable, and but I was just trying, like, I thought they were, like, these cool people, and I'm like,
yeah.
"That's gross." And but it's also,
Yeah.
again, I had to figure out what I don't want because I there's, like, a quote that I love that I forget who says it, but it's like, "Everything that I've loved and has been taken away from me has claw marks on it," and I'm
Oh my
really
gosh,
trying
that
to
just
work with
like
that. Right?
that makes that's beautiful.
'Cause I'm trying to practice, like, not clinging onto things so much and letting it kind of flow a little freer. That it's not easy for me to do because
No.
I'm loyal to a fault,
Yeah,
and I will stand by people and hold on to them and be strong even when they're terrible to me, but I'm learning to be better, but it's a process.
it is very much a process.
Yes,
But I
yes.
can always tell when people like do the therapy work and have a good therapist. There are marks. And when you first started talking, I was like, she's got a good therapist. She's doing the work.
Thank you for noticing.
One of the things that, and it's something I work on in therapy. I have a hard time, and it's unfair, right? But I have a hard time when people don't do the work.
Mhm.
Right, and it's not just
Yes.
with therapy, it's literally in anything, like, I
Yes.
work probably harder than I need to and stuff to live up to my own expectations,
Mhm.
but, um, like, I do the hard work of therapy, like, I've got issues, I have big T's that I don't like to look at,
Mhm.
and, but I deal with it, and so that I'm not, like, passing things along to the kids or, like,
Mhm.
I'm owning my stuff and, not loading it onto other people or, harming it with other people.
Mhm.
And but you can see that like how people talk about stuff. There is like
Mhm.
an awareness and acknowledgement of it. And peace is probably not the right word, but like I mean maybe it is like at peace with what has happened, right? We can't change it. We can't
Mhm.
do anything about what
Mhm.
happened because it has
Mhm.
happened. But what we can do is keep it from just stopping us living and stopping us
Yeah.
being our best self
And
and taking
yes.
control back. That was one of the things my therapist said that I like repeat often. Like when we talk about in a safe place, in a constructive way, the things that have harmed us, right? The things that when they pop into our heads, we look away.
Mhm.
When we talk about it, it takes away some of that sting. It takes away some of that
Absolutely.
power. And so it's still there. It was still hard. It doesn't make it any less hard, but we grow around it,
Yeah.
right?
And it's, like,
We
part of who we are, like, those
Yeah.
hard and we're still we carry it forever, like, I this morning I was talking I'm in perimenopause right now, and I was talking
Me
with
too.
I was talking with somebody about how I feel like it's middle school, like, I don't know how to handle these crazy emotions, and my friend also was like, "Well, and you just started a new school." She's like, "So you're like in school having these emotions, trying to make friends, and
Yeah,
it's so uncomfortable. Like it's
it
one of the
is
most
so
uncomfortable
uncomfortable.
things." But a lot of it I can't control, and I
Mhm.
still want to be better, so I'm still trying to go to school, but like there are so many pieces of baggage that not in a negative way because it's again who I am, but that I'm carrying with me and I'm like, this is how I'm showing
Yeah.
up and this is me. And if you don't like it, I won't
Don't
necessarily like I'm not trying to like make you like it, but also it still sucks when someone doesn't like me. I'll be honest.
I
Like it
was gonna
still
say it's
sucks.
probably is it does it feel like when you get notes on the stuff that you're writing because it is about such a very vulnerable
Yes.
experience, do you think that it's an do you know what I'm trying to ask? Like, is it an added sting?
Yes, it was especially the first time I shared it, like, I was like, "Oh, you're saying the character, but the character's me." So, like,
Yeah.
you're questioning my life and my life choices, and that was really difficult, but then I feel like once I continued to do it and we got more into, like, the craft and the structure, I was much more able to understand that, like, sure, I can reword this or I can write this in a different way, but the first, like, time that I got feedback on it it did not feel good. I was because they were like, "Oh, she
I
must be like a 20-year-old," and I was like,
I'm sure.
I was 35 when I made that decision."
Oh, yeah. But yeah, I was thinking about that because you know you said you were talking with your advisor later
Yes.
today, like separating they are critiquing the like writing aspects
Yes.
of it, but
Yes,
it's
and
writing
his notes were
aspect.
very, like, form and structure, and so I was like, "Okay, I'm still gonna treat myself probably with some gummy nerds either during or after that call because I need
I
a
love
reward."
gummy nerds so hard.
My favorite candy right now. And I always have them when I'm trying to do hard things because I need a treat. I need a little treat. And that's what it's going to be today because I'm going to reward myself for doing something that scares me.
Are you a little neurospicy, Carrie? That's the word I like to use.
I
I
don't
ask because
know.
I am, and you remind me of me, and so you know.
I've never been, I mean, like I have depression and anxiety, but
Yep. But that ADHD, that like there's a specific, I don't
yes,
know.
I
But I just think
do.
also we're very similar, and I
Well, and
love
I
it.
love, like I'm thoroughly on, like, ADHD TikTok, and they're, like, ways that they cope and, like, systems they have set up for themselves. I'm like, "Oh, I will absolutely respond well to that. Yes, I need timers. I need, treats." Yes, so there are a lot of, tools that I have learned that I
Yeah,
have benefited from.
yeah, yeah. You know,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
some thought.
I don't hate it.
Yeah. That's so funny. Okay, I could talk to you all day, and one day I would like to. Um, but we are gonna wrap up. But if people want to learn more about your awesome, awesome story, what should they do? Where do they find you?
So I'm on Instagram at Blooming with Care a lot. I really take you along my life through Instagram. I
And cool outfits.
also and my cool outfits. Thank you for noticing. I'm trying to find new style, and I'm also on TikTok. And I also have like bloomingwithcare.com has a lot of my past writings, not a lot of new things, but if you want to like see some things from the past, that's a big way to just kind of like read some things that I share. And I'm getting into my newsletter again, which you can sign up on Instagram
Ooh,
or any of the places that I just shared. But I'm really trying to get back into sharing a newsletter once a month. That's the goal. We're not
yeah.
like overpowering with emails, it's too much. So,
It is. I have an email list, and I'm like, yeah, I send out like one once a week. It's been 2 weeks, but it's been a couple weeks from HE double hockey stick. So awesome. I'm gonna sign up for that list.
oh, yay! Thank you. I would also like to sign up for
Everyone,
yours.
oh yeah, and get your
No
twice
pressure.
a month
No
emails.
pressure.
No, they're good. They're good. But yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us today. Everybody, follow Blooming with Care. Go to her website and just watch all the awesomeness that she's doing.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode of Catching Up with Conception with me, Audra Smith, fertility coach. I want to thank you for joining us and ask you to subscribe to this podcast on whatever app you're listening on. It may seem small, but it really does make a big impact. Catch me on Instagram and TikTok at Fertility Coach Audra and on our next episode of Catching Up with Conception.